Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Design Cinema. This is Feng speaking, and we are at episode 111. So today's episode is going to be a great follow-up to last week's episode about what AI cannot do. So if you're a student or someone trying to break into the industry, pay attention to today's topic because I'm going to discuss what entertainment design is all about. So I gave this talk in Paris about a month ago, but today I'm going to expand on that and add even a little bit more content, especially towards the end of it. And I did this topic in Paris because of what I've been seeing in student portfolios in the past 5 years or so. The content of these portfolios lack both design and entertainment. They don't have neither. So these portfolios essentially are zero content things that the only value they contain is maybe they're rendered well. But in terms of what the industry look for, we don't look for those portfolios. And these students are probably frustrated as well, right? I asked each one, how's your job search going? How's everything going? And most of them saying, I have nothing. No one contacts me. I have nothing. And the thing is, I know that. I could see it by the work because their portfolio is not what we do as entertainment designers. We'll get to that later in this episode, so pay attention, get some water, get some coffee, because I think this episode is going to run pretty long. The talk in Paris is about an hour. I think this one's going to go for at least an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. For those joining us for the first time, the way I like to do design cinema is more like a classroom setting in which we don't edit things out. I just go and talk, right? If it takes a long time, it takes a long time because education is not about speed. It's not about let's render something in 5 minutes, right? It takes time. So I have a lot of topics to talk about. So let's get started. So the spirit for entertainment design. I chose this word spirit because it has to do with us. We just talked about AI last week. This week, let's focus on what entertainment design comes from, right? It comes from us. It comes from our backgrounds. And to start that, let me give you a little bit of context of my own background, okay? Let me draw some stuff here, make sure that the screen stays alive here. Okay, so let's go way back to 1999. That's when I started teaching for the first time. I kind of got into teaching by chance, okay? A teacher of mine at our center named Norm Sherman. Unfortunately, he passed away several years ago, but he was one of my teachers, a really good teacher that really helped influence me back in school. So he called me up in 99 and go, hey, Feng, can you cover my class, today? So at that time, I've only been out in the industry for 3 years. So I was like, Norm, I never taught class. I don't know what to do, man. I have no idea. He's like, don't worry about it. You've been working for 3 years. The students will find that pretty interesting. Just go ahead, just share whatever knowledge you have. So I went to our center, really nervous. But after the first class was done, I completely fell in love with teaching because you see the influence you have over students in terms of giving them good feedback and telling them how to fix their designs, and all these things are just super, super addicting. In fact, I got so addicted to teaching that I continued to teach at our center while I was doing freelance. That even in the early 2000s, I had a job up in San Francisco in Marin County. So I was working at Skywalker Ranch, and we finished our week's work, and on Friday afternoons, I'll take a flight back down to Los Angeles so I could wake up early on Saturday morning to teach an advanced entertainment class at our center. And then on Sunday night, I'll fly back up to San Francisco to start work on Monday. And I did that for almost an entire year while I was on Star Wars. It was crazy, right? Me and Ryan Church as well, he was doing advanced entertainment with me as well, so we'll kind of offset it. So that was what I was doing. And then later I went to Noman to start teaching at that school. And that's when Alex Alvarez we started talking about, hey, concept art at that time was only really taking place in Los Angeles, right? Everybody outside LA really weren't learning what entertainment design or concept art was. It was such a small little niche industry. So we decided to produce these DVDs, and I believe the first ones in the world to do so. DVDs about concept art, and those kind of got all over the planet. So I said all this background because I want to put into context why that is. In the last 25 years, right, 1999, 25 years, I've seen thousands and thousands of student portfolios. I've seen them as they try to come into school, right, what they look like. I've seen portfolios as they graduate school. I've also seen portfolios in which they apply to companies because I've been an art director in a lot of different studios, and I've seen just hundreds, if not thousands of portfolios, just people applying to companies, right? I've seen everything. And there's been a shift in the content of portfolios from 1999 or the mid-90s to today, especially in the last 5 years. What that shift is, right? I should write some of this stuff down. I think, what layer am I on? As you can see, we have a lot of slides today. Okay, So let's just start write some stuff, right? Let's start with like 90s, or let's 95, right? Here's 2024, okay? Somewhere around here, there's a shift in the content. Because prior to this, and this shift, let's I don't know, let's use a curve. Maybe let's do this curve. Let's start high and go low. Okay, it's like this. Okay, I should move this down a little bit. Okay, I'm the right design here. Oh, this pen is really heavy. Like I said, man, no editing. It's a classroom environment. Let's go and do this. Okay, design, no design. Okay, especially around here. This is the curve. Okay, because in the early days, when I was looking at portfolios, almost all of them were quite entertaining. They might not be drawn well sometimes, they might not be rendered well, but a lot of them have a lot of soul to them. Okay, see why I use spirit, soul. Okay, I could see the person creating this portfolio was having a lot of fun. They were entertaining themselves as well as me, the audience. But as we move forward to the last 5 years or so, all that is gone. There is no more spirit in these portfolios. There's no soul at all. It is just a lifeless, regurgitated portfolio that contains nothing. It is only rendered. Now today, you've probably noticed I'm starting to say some stuff that might not make certain people happy, right? Maybe this is related to what you're doing in your portfolios. But this is my job. Okay, I cannot sugarcoat stuff. My job is to train designers for the past, how many years now? So I need to speak the truth, and this is the stuff I'm seeing. And it's got to a point where it's actually affecting the industry, where friends of mine, art director friends, was asking me for references and stuff because they're like, man, these portfolios are bad, right? We have all these jobs available, but we can't find people to do them. And later, towards the end of this talk, I'll draw you guys a visual chart of breaking all this stuff down so it puts in context of there are actually jobs out there, but they're going to all the good designers. And that doesn't always mean experience. It goes to students as well, which we'll talk about, okay? So this is what made me want to do this entire presentation today. What's happening here and why? But before we get into that, let me share a little bit more about my background. Okay, I just talked about my education background. Let's go way back to when I was a young kid, because that all plays into what entertainment is all about and the things that influence myself as well as many of my friends to be in this industry in the first place. Okay, so let me wipe this out and start to the next slide. Gotta go way back down here. All right, so let's go back to when I was 10 years old. Okay, in the 80s, these films really influenced me. So I know this is kind of generic, right? Everyone about my age says it's Star Wars, Alien, and so forth, but it's true. Because remember, at that time, these films were very rare. There weren't many science fiction films out per year. You get like one or two, right? So, and when they come out, they were a very big deal. I think Star Wars coined the phrase blockbuster movies, right? So you literally line up at the theaters and just can't wait to watch them. So as a young kid, what I cared about was the content of these IPs, right? Well, at the time, I didn't even know what IPs were, right? These films took me into their world. I totally believed everything in these movies. I thought Luke Skywalker was real, right? I thought the Millennium Falcons was real, and Darth Vader was pretty freaky, right? That's what I fell in love with. I didn't know anything about design. I didn't know about concept art, right? All that stuff comes much later. What I cared about was, wow, the worlds, these IPs or these films. Let's not use IP because that's something that, the industry people use. As a kid, I want to watch Star Wars because it's so freaking cool. I want to press that button. I want to look on that thing, right? What is all this about? What is all this? That's what I was fascinated with, right? Here's Dark Crystal, Blade Runner. Blade Runner, I couldn't understand the film. I remember the first few times I watched it, I had no idea what's going on. But I love the world that it took place, right? I've never seen cyberpunk before, visualized this way. So the world is so interesting to me. Okay, so this is some of the stuff that was influencing me at a very early age. Let's keep going. Next, video game came out, right? This is all about when I was 10, 12 years old, moving from elementary school to junior high to high school. Okay, these are the years I'm talking about. And the reason why I'm talking about this is, again, this is what influenced myself to become an entertainment designer. It's the stories and the ideas, not the drawing, not the rendering, the ideas that got me into this industry. Okay, so let's continue here. So when the Nintendo came out, the graphics were pretty crappy, right? These are 8-bit little pixels. But to a 10-year-old kid, right? At the time, I think more than 10 now. When Nintendo came out, it was 89, so I'd have been 13, 14, okay? So when I came out, in my mind, the world of Hyrule did not look like this. It's fully rendered in my mind, right? Like beautiful clouds. You don't even see the sky in this game, right? It's completely top down. But in my mind, it was like blue sky, and when we got to like what do you call it, the Death Mountain or something like that, I could see like all these dark clouds, right? All this stuff was happening in my head, and I believe that's when my brain was being developed for thinking about design, right? And I think as for a young kid, those years are very critical in kind of shaping what you're going to become later on, at least these childhood influences. So same thing with Gradius. These little spaceships, even though they're made out of like maybe 200 pixels or 150 pixels, in my mind, these are fully metallic, cool-looking spaceships flying around in space, right? And then when the 16-bit era game came out, this is Final Fantasy. I was in junior high, I think, at the time. So this game had a huge influence on me because I totally felt these characters were real. That the story it took place was almost like watching a good movie or reading a good novel. They're so real that I felt like they're friends of mine. So it's so crazy. Even I think back today, from today, thinking back to that, 20, 30 years ago, I still remember the emotions I felt talking to these characters when one leaves your party or one dies, right? You still feel that. And that's so important. Why? Because entertainment design is all about that, right? It's about bringing a experience to your viewers, make them happy, make them sad, bring them into another world, bring them stories never heard before, right? And make them think about these worlds when they're done playing the game or watching the movie. Okay, so let's continue here. So Mana and of course Super Mario World. I played this game so much when I could find the time. But as I got into like junior high and high school, you got to think about college. So my gaming kind of dropped off. But in junior high, elementary school, I definitely played a ton of video games. Next, cartoons. Okay, same thing. What I liked about these cartoons from the 80s was all the worlds and the stories and characters they created. Thundercats. I loved the whole crew, right? Everyone was so different from one another. The world they lived in was so interesting. He-Man and Castle Grayskull, Skeletor. Man, it's just so fun. Even talking about it, you can probably tell I'm super entertained. I'm like entertained myself because these memories are sparking all those imaginations in me. And when I watched it and all the TV commercials I went with all this, right? So of course DuckTales and G.I. Joe, absolutely loved it, and Tailspin. So this kind of stuff, why is it so important? Because, let's go to the next slide. We go into toys. Okay, earlier I mentioned TV commercials. Back in the 80s, the only two commercials you watched between Saturday morning cartoon was pretty much breakfast cereal, right? Things with a lot of sugar, and toys. So why did these companies make the toys? Well, obviously they're trying to make money from it. But part of it is because they knew if their product was entertaining, the kids like myself, we want to continue that story in our own real world. Toys allowed me to take these IPs, gotta stop using IPs, right? Toys allowed me to take these films, video games, cartoons, and now continue playing with that and make my own stories in the real world. That is so important to realize what this industry is all about, right? So that's why these toys do super well. So these are all things I found on the internet. I mean, these photos I found on the internet, but I did try to find photos of toys I actually owned back in the 80s. So I had pretty much everything you see here. I did not have this earthquake guy, but I have everybody else here. I had this little Lego castle. So most of these Star Wars figures, I didn't have these guys down here, but I had everyone up here. I had this Falcon. And of course, lots of G.I. Joes, and I played the crap out of this Jabba the Hutt thing because this little guy, I found him so little cool. I remember trying to figure out how this little thing worked, right? So, but back to the Falcon, for example. I remember sticking my head into this little panel that I could pop off and trying to look through here towards the cockpit and out and flying this Falcon in my parents' backyard and pretending I was Han Solo, right? This is what entertainment is all about, bringing that world into somebody else, right? Entertaining them. Okay, you're gonna hear me repeat this over and over in today's episode because that's the thing I feel is now lost in new designers. They're forgetting what the purpose of our industry is all about. It's almost like I'm gonna get into this later, but again, I'm kind of skipping ahead here. But it's almost like these portfolios are for their own self or for their own industry. It's like a circle. It's like I'm entertaining other concept designers, but I don't care about the audience, right? And also the content really is not entertaining anybody in terms of what I'm describing here. All right, let me slow down a bit because today's episode is long anyway, so let's not rush ahead. Okay, next slide. So even at age 10 to maybe 15, I realized that the designs, right, functions and details and everything was supporting the visual storytelling. What I mean by that is that I could tell that these games and films were different from one another, right? I didn't know that they were different from design, all that kind of stuff, but I knew that the shapes and forms and everything was structured to support their worlds. For example, you look at something like Star Wars, right? So I watched this when I was 7, 8 years old, somewhere around that time period. I knew that this film was overall kind of lighthearted. It was a space adventure, right? Kind of whimsical. There was a lot of silly stuff in it. The creatures were kind of funny, right? So that's what this movie was doing. Versus Alien, it was a horror film, right? At age 10, you're not supposed to watch this kind of stuff. But kids, we get our hands on these VHS tapes anyways. But it was a horror film. And the way the sets were, the way the lighting were trying to create that sense of dread, that sense of fear. And I knew that. And I wanted to know more about it. But in the 80s, there were no behind the scenes books, right? There was nothing, right? And Hollywood did not talk about anything they did. There was no behind the scenes videos. There was no interviews with directors. This stuff was magical to me. No idea how anything happened. So to find out more about like, how does this work, right? How does this work, man? How do I continue this, right? I mentioned earlier, I played with the toys. That helped me kind of relive these stories. But I also started to see little details in these worlds. For example, here's a plane from Indiana Jones. I saw this plane and go, man, that's really cool. How do I find out more about this and learn about this, I guess, this industry? Even though at the time I had no idea I'm going to get into this industry and become a concept designer, I just liked it. So this started me down a path of really getting into the real world. In fact, I became fascinated. I use this word because it really comes down to geeking out on everything. So let's talk more about that. I hope my talk right now is making sense to you guys, right? I'm sharing my personal background with you and why I'm in this industry, and hoping that it'll spark something in you. Because as we move forward in this talk, we're gonna come down to what entertainment design in or packages, which is you. Okay, who you are, what you like, what you want to do, what your influences are. That's what builds entertainment. So I'm sharing this with you so you can see what built my background. Okay, so let's get back on topic here. So I begged my parents to take me to any museum they can. So they took me to Washington, D.C., the nice museum there, the one in New York, Natural History Museum, the one in L.A. So like most kids, I became fascinated with dinosaurs and prehistoric stuff and whatever. I'll spend the whole day. My parents would just drop me off there, and I'll just spend the whole day looking at everything I can. Here's the La Brea Tar Pits, which is pretty close to my home in Los Angeles. So I remember going to I think the basement, they have a pretty sizable museum with saber-tooth tigers and so forth. And of course, books. So my parents were not ready to buy me these books. Books were pretty expensive. They still are today. So, when you're 12, 13 years old, my parents are not going to start building me a library of books. So instead, I went to the library to borrow them. And I remember at the time, most libraries had a limit of, I think, 10 books or so that I could check out per week. So I was borrowing my sister's library card, my mom's library card, my dad's library card, so I could maximize how many books I could check out. And I remember carrying home a canvas bag of maybe 2 dozen books, barely, they're super heavy, just carrying them home, and could not wait to put them on the carpet, run to the kitchen, put some Pop-Tarts in the toaster, get some Hot Pockets, whatever, and spend the entire afternoon just drooling over photos of all these things, right? Everything was real world, and completely geeking out. What is this? What is that? What is this, right? Remember, at that time, I don't know anything about concept art. I didn't even know I'm going to get into the industry. I just found this stuff to be fascinating, okay? And architecture as well. So let me share with you some stuff that completely made me geek out at a young age. If you watch this channel enough, you know that I love planes. So in 1986, the movie Top Gun comes out with Tom Cruise. And man, is that movie cool or what, right? As a young kid, you watch that film, you're like, I want to be a pilot, right? But also, I got to see jets fly in a way that I've never seen before. So why do we like this kind of stuff? I'm sure some of you are also into airplanes and stuff, and these similar things, right? Part of it also has to do with story. Whoops, wrong slide here. Let's go here. Look how many slides we got. Okay, story. Okay, let me write that down. Because these airplanes essentially are characters themselves. They have really interesting backgrounds, right? Their development, their design, the missions they go on. They themselves are little stories as well. And we find them fascinating because of things they could do, right? Every one of them are interesting, right? That's the SR-71, probably my favorite jet, as well as probably many of you guys as well. Here's, for example, the B-58 Hustler, one of my favorite kind of Sentry jets, right? 1950s, 1960s jets. Beautiful design, tons of stories associated with it. Lots of interesting design things associated with it as well. But as a kid, I didn't know any of that. I just knew they're really cool, right? I was reading about their missions and things they've done, right? All the cool things that it took to develop them. And part of that story also, I put a F-14 over here. This is the F-14 Tomcat. So what got me started in these jets was when I was watching Top Gun. Something that I couldn't understand was, why are there two pilots sitting parallel in a plane, right? Because when you fly in a 737, the pilots are kind of sitting left and right, right? So I could understand, like, they kind of help because they all look out to the front. But I was like, why are there two pilots in the plane? What happens if the back person want to go left and right, and the front person want to go left, right? So I went to the library, started looking this stuff up, and found out that, oh, Goose, right? This is Maverick, Tom Cruise, and his co-pilot. Actually, it's not a co-pilot. It's a backseater. Is Goose. He's not a pilot, right? He's what they call a Rizzo or a Wizzo, a Rio. It's not a Wizzo. A Rizzo or a Rio, which operates the radar, navigation, and weapon systems. So that started me into this deep dive into all the systems of the F-14. All the backseater kind of radars they have, how many bombs they could carry, all these cool little things. And geeking out is the word I want to use here, because this stuff later is going to help me as I get into the design industry. But this time, it wasn't about any of that. It was just absorbing information as much as I can. Okay. Next. Another thing I did, my parents had a pretty big backyard. So I remember after school, when I'm done my homework, I will start looking for bugs in my backyard. And same thing here. I was fascinated with the story. What does that mean? Okay, how could a bug have stories? Well, I remember looking for ants and just following one from whenever I saw one, and just follow its track all the way to wherever it's going, right? You'll see that it communicates with other ants. It'll climb over obstacles. You'll kind of go one way, kind of go a little bit and back up and go another way. Fascinating stuff. And the worlds that they lived in was microscopic, right? Everything was tiny, but if you, as a kid, you could put your eyes down to this level and you saw a complete different world. So all this stuff was also starting to influence me from a visual point of view, as well as story of what these things were doing, right? What their life was like. It's like an alien world, essentially, which it really is. This is not the world we're from. So you're examining some other creature's world. And that's going to come into play later as we get into entertainment design, right? Okay, next. I also became fascinated with ancient cultures, okay? So I don't know what got me started with this. I think it could be video games, maybe games I found a fantasy with their castles and so forth. But I remember just loving castles and ancient structures as a young kid, right? Reading about them. And something else that I really loved was cities or history that no longer exists. Because as a kid, I cannot see this anymore. Actually, not just a kid, anybody. This is past. We can't see anymore. So to me, this is just as good as looking at an alien planet, because it's all non-existing things. And I remember looking at photos like these in books and trying to imagine myself in these worlds. All right, next slide. One of the most important ones here. So this slide is, I didn't know anything about concept art. Why is this slide so important? Because at age 10 to 15 or so, right? Everything that was happening in my mind was about the IPs I just mentioned earlier, or the games, films, and toys and so forth I mentioned earlier. My brain was doing nothing but creating stories outside of the world, as well as when I watch these shows, trying to absorb their stories, right? Design was kind of there, but it's not really what I focused on. It was like just pretending to be in these worlds, being entertained by them, want to continue telling their stories. So this stuff here, right? Hoots, Ralph McCurry, Sid Mead, Joe Johnston, right? John Birkin, all these Japanese artists, and here's Geiger. I didn't know who they were, right? I found out about these designers later when I got into college. But as a young kid, who cares? Young kids don't know anything about this kind of stuff. But why is that so important? Because these people weren't influencing me at all. I wasn't trying to become a concept designer. I wasn't trying to emulate any of their techniques. And most importantly, I wasn't trying to emulate their designs, right? That didn't even come into my radar. So why is that so important today? Because the portfolios I mentioned earlier, the past 5-6 years or so, is completely the opposite, in which students are obviously looking at looking at ArtStation and emulating concept designers, emulating their style, emulating their forms, emulating their designs. Pretty much don't have designs of their own or ideas of their own. They're regurgitating others, and sometimes so obvious who they're actually copying from. And that's why these portfolios over time is dropped in value. Okay, they have no content, it's just regurgitation. Because instead of being influenced by the real world, like some of the examples I showed you earlier, the influences are only from other designers. And today, let's talk about how to get out of this. Okay, and earlier the slides I showed you was part of that inspiration. Look at the real world, fall in love with things around you, find things that interest you, and turn those interests into entertainment designs. Okay, let's move forward here. I'm gonna take a break in a bit, just in case things crash. But let's go a few more slides, then we'll take a break. Okay, so as I mentioned, I didn't know anything about concept art until I got into Art Center. I started to learn who they were, and Art Center taught me technical skills. By the way, here's Norm Sherman, the teacher I told you about earlier, who got me into teaching. Right, so he passed away, but you can see the stuff on the board here. This is probably taken in the 90s, I'm guessing. Are things we continue teaching at the school, right? Draw through, learning about real world. By the way, take a look, real world stuff, bugs, cars, right? You draw airplanes. We don't talk about made up stuff here. We learn about the real world and a lot of technique, and we use that to build things that's from imagination. Does that make sense to you, right? Learn about the real world, take that information, make it into imagination. Okay, so that's what Art Center taught me. And the most important thing is we discuss design ideas with classmates. Okay, last week in my AI one, my last slides about this as well. Okay, Art Center technical skill is taught, but we use those technical skills, we use the information from the real world to do this. Again, going back to today's young designers, complete opposite. Okay, when I meet students, they're talking about what software are you using, what brush are you using, what 3D render package are you using, what Blender files are you buying from whatever 3D market. Where did you get that building from? Where did you buy that? None of it is about the idea, right? I don't hear students talking about wouldn't it be cool if, or wouldn't it be cool if this thing, wouldn't it be cool if nope, it's what software, what brush, what thing to download, what lighting thing, what's your setup in your 3D pack rendering. All these things have to do with technical stuff, and almost zero design ideas. Okay, let's continue here. So what we did back then, and I still do today, is if you get an idea, let's just put that on paper as fast as we can. Okay, so we go home, we get the assignment from the teachers. I remember going home and cannot wait to put these ideas on paper. I couldn't draw well, right? Because I'm a student, but it didn't matter. It's about just putting everything down on paper, and then next day we go to class and we put them on the walls. Okay, here's more photos of Norm in class with classmates. So these are not my photos. These are things I found from the internet with Norm teaching. But why am I showing you this? Because this is all about what we do. Okay, ideas on the wall. I remember in school, the night before, you probably get very little sleep. You go to class around, I think by the time about 7, 8 in the morning. So we'll put everything on the wall, go over to the cafeteria to grab a coffee, and come back and start looking through everybody's designs. And I still remember everyone came with their own stuff. Everybody's design was different. Okay, some were cool, some were interesting, some were weird, some were just plain how bad, right? But that's what created the environment we're in, right? This slide I showed last week as well. The faces, the responses, right? Look at them laughing and smiling because we're discussing design. Okay, Technique is important. The teacher will point out if your perspective is wrong or your drawing is kind of off, but that's just the tool of it, okay? The main discussion is about what is this design here, right? I think these students are doing some kind of pet furniture, I'm guessing, right? You can see here's a little dog right there. So right here's a cat thing, I think, right? This thing's pretty cool. It looks like a bed that they can sleep in or whatever, right? So you discuss your design ideas, and that's going to spark more ideas as you talk to your classmates and talk to your teachers, all about design. Technique was a backseat thing. It's important. We got to draw well, we got to render well, but that's not what the school is all about, right? The school is about design. So, and then Norm will often take us out. So like sometimes you get to class, it's like today, field trip day, right? And we love those because you get to get out of school. So he'll take us down to, for example, Santa Monica Airport, KSMO down in Los Angeles, and we'll bring our sketchbooks and we'll go draw airplanes, right? So these are also photos I found on the internet, but I did something very similar. I have sketchbooks just like this from school, in which we went over there and drew. They had a DC-3 down there. They had a couple of Mustangs at a time. It was really, really cool. Sometimes we'll take us to the zoo, which you drew animals, right? Sometimes, our center is a pretty famous school, so they'll actually get the zoo to bring like some baby tigers and some little animals to the school, and we'll pet them and then start sketching them out. Again, everything's about learning and turning those ideas from the real world into imagination. Okay, so let's keep going here. And the goal has always about entertainment, okay? Telling stories. Putting all those things I just talked about, your childhood, the movies you watched, the games you played, the places you've been to, the museums, the books, right? All that, sparkling all sorts of ideas in your head. And now you have learned the technical skills from school, where now you're learning on your own, right? The technical skills are just tools. That's it. They're just tools. Now you take those tools and start to tell your own story. Okay. So myself, I think my imagination is pretty wild, and I have all sorts of weird stuff in my head that I want to do. So, but I always try to push something forward. And it doesn't matter if it's trending on internet. Who cares? Okay, when we're in this business in the 90s, there's no internet, there's no social media. We did this because we liked it. It wasn't because, oh, this thing is trending right now, or this thing is popular, so then that's what I do too. If you're doing that, all you're doing is following trends. You're not going to stand out at all. And believe me, the industry that wants good designers don't want that either. Okay, I'm gonna break that for you down later and towards the end of this talk here. Okay, so of course I had lots of fun doing this kind of stuff. Alien invasion, just whatever I wanted. I didn't care if this stuff was popular or somebody liked it. Didn't care. I liked it because I have to entertain myself. And hopefully, if I entertain what I like to do, I'm also entertaining the audience, right? Thinking from their perspective, thinking, oh, I think someone's gonna find this pretty cool. Hopefully they'll get a big smile out of it if I put this forward, right? So. All sorts of fun stuff. And I put this photo here because part of it also is you got to enjoy this job. You got to have fun with it. You got to be silly with it, okay? I know this job, when you're in the studio, you got to be pretty serious. But end of the day, we're working in entertainment design. Man, this is a fun, very privileged job. You're in cool places usually, art departments, you're hanging out with a bunch of friends, and you get to draw stuff that essentially ends up in video games and films. And however, this job is hard, but it is really, really fun. So you gotta share your silly stuff, right? So this is back at the ranch, the place I talked about above San Francisco. So one day we went to this little closet up at the 3rd floor, and there was tons of stuff from Indiana Jones and Star Wars and everything in there. And I found this TIE fighter outfit that they used in the movie, actually, for the costume department. So I put it on, and everyone's like, dude, you gotta take a photo holding this is the Jar Jar they used for doing some of the animatics and so forth. So why is that here? Because we gotta have fun. Okay, so like I mentioned earlier, if you have a cool idea in your head, draw it. Who cares if if it's not trending or someone else is not doing it? This is about you. Okay, you gotta put forth your ideas out there. Let people discover you of what's happening in your head, and hopefully entertain us with it. Okay, so this is all demos I've done in the school, right? And sometimes I go into these demos blind, meaning that it's not planned, right? I didn't even know what I'm gonna do for the demo. Sometimes I tell the students, what do you guys want to see today? Or sometimes like right before class, I have random ideas. If I want to draw big dinosaurs with, going on a hunting trip or some camping trip, go ahead. If you want to draw Tesla vehicles, 1920s vehicles or Tesla guns in them, draw it. Who cares, right? I was doing these kind of things with no influence from social media, what other designers are doing. Just do whatever you want to do, because that's always been what I want to do. That's why we're in this industry. We want to create things and share that with the audience out there, and hopefully entertain them with that content, right? So here's like weird alien plane. This was like, what if aliens, almost like Transformers or something, they got the DNA into our World War II airplanes and start morphing them into kind of a in-between thing, right? So because I love airplanes, I do these kind of funky things. So whatever comes to my mind, I like to draw them out, okay? And in the process, really enjoy it. And that's why I'm being in this industry 27 years now. I'm still loving it. It's so fun, okay? All right. Next one here. And that's the philosophy I brought into the school. Don't worry, I'm going to get to education soon. Right now, it's all background stuff. But as I finish this here, we're going to talk about how we're going to start to fix this stuff, hopefully, for some of you guys, okay? So the philosophy I brought to school is essentially what I learned from Art Center. I wanted students to be together, to share, and that's why we never did online, okay? For the longest time, we never did it because I want everyone to be together, and everybody came from all over the world. We literally have students. I think we used to have a map in the school that put a pin in all the countries that our students came from. And why is that so important? Because everyone bring their backgrounds into their world, into their work, right? Some people come from Europe, some from Asia, right? Africa, just everywhere, America, South America, just all over the place, and their personality is who they are, what's in here, okay? What's up here is what our instructors want to leverage. We want to get that stuff out, okay? Because a lot of our students, they come in, they're quite worried. They'll be like, I used to be in the oil industry, or I used to, as a chemist, right? We had tax accountants, we had engineers, all sorts of different backgrounds. And they're saying, can I do this? Can I become a designer? My answer was like, that's exactly why you could become a designer, because your background is so interesting, okay? Instead of saying you waste your time learning about chemistry, right? We literally had a student who was a chemist or something like that. I'm like, instead of wasting that, didn't you work in a lab? Didn't you work with all sorts of cool equipment that none of us here have experienced? He's like, yeah, I did. I could leverage that. Share those stories with us, right? Make up an IP or make up a story that maybe could put some of your expertise in it. We had other students we had a student who was an engineer, worked on airplanes, right? I'm like, dude, that is something none of us here have done. Why don't you do stories, really geeking out on engineering of airplanes, right? So we have students everywhere, and it was our job to get them and leverage that. Here's our next slide, right? We want to leverage each student's imaginations. Notice, even on these walls, okay, everyone's stuff is different, because this is the stuff I took away from Art Center. I need to really put designs on the wall. I don't want to see regurgitated content. We don't let our students do just stuff you see on the internet, which we're going to talk about very shortly here, okay, or what those things are. We don't let it do it because those things have no design in them. Complete waste of time. The only thing they serve is really a technical thing, which we do a little bit in first term and second term. But once the technical stuff is over, it is time to do design. It is time to do storytelling. It is time for me to stand in front of these walls and put a big smile on my face, because I'm really getting in here going, yeah, this is pretty cool, right? A lot of them have presentation issues, maybe drawing issues, rendering issues. Don't worry about it. That stuff will work itself out over time, because it is a muscle and eye coordination skill, right? The more you draw, the more you render, the better you're gonna get. What we want to get at this point is to start to make them think like a designer. Okay, focus on the things that's going to get them a job. And right now, I'm kind of jumping ahead here, but even on the AI video, some people are saying, oh, junior artists are out of a job, right? Junior artists are going to get replaced by AI. Now, if you're doing the stuff that AI could do, yes, you are being replaced because your content has no value. But if you're a junior designer that have actual design experience, you can get a job, because we have students, like I mentioned in the last video, they don't have any experience and they get into really, really good companies right off the bat. We have hundreds of students in those cases, okay? So it's not just like one or two that got lucky. Hundreds, okay, that are in pretty much every studio you could think of that's making a pretty cool game. We probably have an FZD graduate in them, okay? And same with the movie industry as well. So that's why, because their portfolios, they might look kind of boring to the outsider. Yes, they're not that flashy. They're not like, we're going to talk about again a little bit later here. They're not the most flashiest stuff. But the content is what studios want. Design content, story elements, things that drive IP forward, and not these kind of render passes, okay? So Yeah, look at this. We always have students working together, sharing stuff, our walls here. Each time they put up a project, this is a term 3 class. Oh, my dog is whining back there. So every time they have a presentation, we'll put them on the walls, and then all the other terms come and look at it, share ideas. They'll ask each other, how'd you come up with this idea? Everything is about idea, and training students to start to tell their story, right? Something I probably didn't mention in the early design cinemas. We always present on walls. The reason for that is because we can have a student standing here. I think actually the previous slide did that quite well. Okay, this here. Okay, we start to teach students how to sell your designs, right? How to introduce your IP or your story to other people, because you gotta believe in your ideas in order to sell that to other people. Because keep in mind, these things are one day gonna be worth thousands, hundreds of thousands, and millions of dollars to someone out there, because they're taking your idea and maybe making that into a movie or a video game that's going to take lots and lots of investment. So if you don't even believe in this, how do you expect other people to put money in it, right? And that's why if you don't have no content, why should any company actually hire you? Why would they pay you when your stuff has no value? So we train our students very early on to try to sell their stuff, right? Tell me about your world. How'd you come up with this? Why do you like it? What kind of story is happening here? What is this character doing? What is this world doing? Those things to train them to think. And if they don't have that kind of stuff, they have a very bad presentation, right? And later we'll see why that is, okay? So I'm gonna make some examples of that. Okay, let's go next slide here. You guys probably tell I'm pretty passionate about this, because this is something that's been driving me nuts for the last 5 years, because again, reviewing student portfolios got to a point where it's so boring. The content is so regurgitated. It's like, I gotta do something about this, right? I try my best in our school to do that, but I also want to help other students, right, on YouTube and Design Cinema, to put this information forward. Hopefully, maybe it'll resonate with some of you, because you could tell I love this industry. I want to better this industry, and I want you guys to have fun jobs and do what I've been doing the last 30 years and continue that. But if you're going down the wrong path, that's not going to work. You're going to give up. You're going to find it very frustrating. You're going to think the industry sucks. You're going to think that there's no jobs available. You're going to think that no one's hiring. That's not the case if you are a good designer. Plenty of jobs out there for those who have the knowledge of design, okay? So let me finish some student work here, and then I will take a break. Actually, let me take a quick break here so we don't crash, and then we'll continue, all right? So I'll be right back. All right, and we are back. Everything seems to be working pretty well. I did check the audio real quick and noticed that you might hear some scratchy noises in the back. That's because my dog is here in my room. So he's behind me right now. He's sleeping. But when he walks around, his paws will hit the hardwood floor, and you might hear some scratchy noises. But hopefully my audio is loud enough this time. I'm trying to speak much louder than last time, so that covers up any scratchy noises you might hear. Okay, so let's continue here. So earlier I talked about how we leverage students' imagination, because everything is about design. Okay, so I'm gonna go through a little bit of student work here very quickly, because you can find all this stuff on our website as well. There's thousands of images up there. The reason why I want to show this, because you could tell this stuff does not look AI generated, first of all. Secondly, they're actual design content. They aren't flashy images, okay, which we're going to talk about. I think I said about 3-4 times now. We're going to talk about that very shortly now. But this kind of content might not be flashy when you go to ArtStation, right? They don't pop off the page. But believe me, this stuff gets them jobs like crazy, okay? When they send this stuff out, they get 4 or 5 offers sometimes, okay? I remember last term a student graduated, and then they were like, okay, I got like 3 offers. One's from Squaresoft, Square Enix. The other one's, I think, from, Guerrilla Games, I think, right? I forgot the last one. It was like basically all these AAA studios. I'm like, dude, you're getting offers from really good studios, right? And these are students just graduating, and they're getting these offers. So why? Reason is because these things are all design, okay? Look at the engineering here. Again, they don't have to be real engineers. You don't have to be a NASA, or some kind of, real world engineer, but you have to know enough about the real world to translate that into a believable, entertaining world. Okay, look at this stuff. Look how cool it is, right? So these students, they're going to have no problem doing the flashy renderings. But in my school, I want them to learn this stuff first, okay? Get down and do the really difficult stuff. Once you do this, the other stuff is much easier, okay? Here's some other ones. So let me make sure on the right layer here. Okay, make some notes. Oh, I love this project. I remember seeing this on the wall and just totally falling in love with the content here. Because again, it's entertaining, right? Even as an instructor, the student work is entertaining me. So if it's entertaining me and entertaining other classmates, I know that the students got a good chance of finding work out there. And they do. These students I'm showing you, they all have good jobs out there, right? This is kind of like a 1930s, I think, a car mechanic, kind of like the Big Bob, the thing that is spin in restaurants where, is it Betty Bob, Betty Poop or something like that? That style, really cool. So you can see every student has their own kind of imagination, their own style and their own stories to tell. And that's what we really try to push for. Instead of pushing everyone to do like, oh, here's what's trending on, social media, so let's teach everyone how to do this epic painting. What's the point of that, okay? Rendering, like I said, is a technical skill. You could learn that even on your own. What we want to teach is let's leverage design, let's leverage story, okay? Because I'm starting like a repeating record here, but that's what this episode is all about. Okay, let's look at a few more. Where am I here? Dunk. All right, look at this one. I love this one. I still remember looking at this. This is from like 3-4 years ago, I think. When the student put this on the wall, I was like, this is so cool, right? This is wolf versus sheep, right? Like a RTS game or something. And the student's using a Viking motif for the overall design inspiration. So you can see these lamb and goats and sheep, right? It came up with really cool names. Crossbow and all that kind of stuff, wolf basher. So these are the sheeps, and of course a wolf. There's a wolf dressed with the sheep skin, so that's a wolf in sheep's clothing. Really nice play on words there. Look, there's like some anatomy issues. There's some probably small drawing issues here and there. Who cares? My job as instructor is I'll give the technical feedback first, right, to make sure that fix the hands, fix this, fix that. But I don't worry about that too much because I know the student to get better later. What I want to give them critique on is how good is this idea? Is this going to sell? Is this going to be placed in front of people and they're going to be entertained by your products? That's what my feedback is about. And I try to give them other feedback, try to drive it further. What else could we do with this IP? What else can we put in there to make it more fun, right? And that's our jobs as instructors, as art directors, right? Is to push that entertainment factor. Okay. Look at this one. This is a project sometimes we like to do, like design a theme park, right? Because notice in our school, we rarely do like hardcore military stuff or, those epic paintings because those things are, again, kind of easy. Okay, you stick a gun on anything, it kind of looks good by default because of how the industry or how the audience perceives weapons of any kind. So we put that in the back burner, okay? Once they get to term 3, like that's almost like 6-7 months into the school, we allow some students to do some weapon stuff. Most of the time we do civilian stuff because it's much harder to design. And a theme park is really hard. But look at the designs here, right? So the theme parks, you got to design some attractions. This is actually designed for a store, okay? Within the theme park, like what the store layout is like and what are the products they're selling. Look at the imagination here. I love this backpack. I remember seeing this go, dude, that's a good idea. And I've been in so many situations in which I look at our students' design, I go, dude, you should go make this, right? Because I think this will actually sell in the real world. Go pitch this to a zoo or something or to an investor because it's really cool. And we actually had students do that in the past before, in which I thought their ideas were so cool that might as well make it, go patent it or something, or go do some prototypes with it because the idea is good. So, I don't know if this is his idea. I'm pretty sure this is quite interesting. It's like a backpack with little wings coming out. So cool. What else has he got over here? Here's some of the staff that works at the zoo, what the costume could look like. I know this stuff might look boring. Okay, it's not a big mecha guy with a giant machine gun. But come on, that stuff it's overdone. There's so much of that stuff. The only thing you're playing with really is just some, is it a triangle for a shoulder versus a square or maybe a half dome? What else is new at that point? Just another regurgitated. And in fact, that's why AI is doing so well on these days because they have so much data to train on. You know what I'm saying? But they're not actually thinking about design. You're just doing a form regurgitation. This stuff here, you cannot put big guns on them. You can't put a big armor on them. You actually have to think, how do I solve this design with a very, very limited limitation? I guess that's a weird way to say it, but you're very limited in terms of what you could do. Okay, when you're doing a big mecha thing with a big gun, you could do whatever heck you want. You want to put a light here? Go ahead. You want to put a giant gun there? Go ahead. You want to put a big thing with a bunch of eyes on it? Go ahead. Here, you can't do that because this is real world solutions, right? Things that could work in this earth. And that challenges the student to really, really think. So look, here's some lights that could be at the theme park, right? Of course, I'm sure a theme park designer look at this, go, oh, there's all sorts of issues. I could see issues here too. But this is a student. Okay, we've got to let them have some fun first before we start to tear them down. It's like, hey, if this isn't a real theme park, the kids will probably steal all this stuff. They'll probably break that and all that kind of stuff, right? Theme park stuff has to be very sturdy and all that. But we don't try to put that early on. We want to still leverage their imagination, let them have some fun first, and then put some reality back into it. Here's some drink design, some cup design, look at this noodle thing. It comes like, this is awesome. Okay, I know some of you might think this is so stupid. I want to draw big mechas. Go ahead, you go do that. Okay, go draw your mechs. Let's see who finds the job. Let's see whose brain is more developed for design thinking versus just rendering pretty pictures. These students are doing things, yes, kind of boring looking, but as a teacher, when I see this, I go, his brain or her brain is headed in the right direction. They're thinking about solution and they're thinking about entertainment. I love this stuff. When I see simple things like this, I go, this is so good. This is so fun. Okay, so look at all this. Look at the merry-go-round with the birds and stuff. Once you start digging into this, you realize how much work, how much thinking is in here. It is not some generic regurgitated thing. One of a kind, essentially. Okay, a few more. Then we'll get to it. This is a key art here. So let me show you this one, right? The blimps and remember last week we talked about AI cannot do interiors and exteriors. These students are matching this, right? This area is just this area here. You can see it's all matching. Beautiful sets, period pieces. I think that my love for history also rubs off on our students. So oftentimes they'll also do things in Art Deco period because I love Art Deco. I love Art Nouveau, industrial, early or late 1800s, early 1900s industrialization. So because I show a lot of our students that kind of stuff, so they get influenced and they start doing things in Art Deco and Art Nouveau. Not just saying they're copying or regurgitating. They're taking influences that they find for the first time going to school, because oftentimes they don't even know these things exist either. So my job, once to teach design, others to expose our students to the world, to Earth. So I show them all sorts of stuff. I bring my own books, my own collection in and put on the table for the students to check out, hopefully inspiring them to start looking elsewhere besides just ArtStation for influences. Okay. A couple more. Oh, this stuff is so cool, right? So his world is about the monsters got this asteroid fell, and then as a result, all the animals in this forest got really, really big, and this whole thing is taking place in medieval times, right? Medieval Europe, right? All the animals are kind of these mutated, huge ones. So that's the problem. So now we've got to solve the solution, right? If your world has this story in it, how do we solve it? So here's some of the solutions, and I love, man, what the student did here. Look at this. So they hunt a big, I guess this will be what do you call it? Elk, right? A huge one. So how do they take apart an animal this big? So they build these rigs to take it apart, and then look at these rigs to take down to cut the rib apart. So look at these little pegs. Okay, beautiful, absolutely beautiful design solutions here to put these little pegs into these little holes, and then that way they could put the rib, and look at the counterweights to lift the rib up into this thing, the ladder. Look at this. This is what I'm talking about. Functional design. Yes, it's not a big mecha tank or a big flashy spaceship, but this drives the student's imagination. Right now, I heard he's working, I can't remember, in Japan or somewhere, in some animation studio, doing a lot of design work. So he's doing great. He also got a lot of job offers as soon as he graduated school, because you have to. This is pure designer thinking, right? He could work in animation if he wanted to do key art and all sorts of stuff. He could work in games industry. He could work in film industry. It's up to him what he wants to do, because he's got the foundation for it already. And I told him, I go, dude, you're gonna have no problem for the rest of your life in this industry, because your design solution is so good, better than mine. I can't even come up with this. This is so good, right? So look at all these solutions here. Right, what the market looks like if the world had giant animals, right? Here's the hunters going out on their hunts. He has lots of these. I'm only showing you one or two of them. He did a whole project. It's tons, dozens and dozens of these kind of drawings. Look at what a kid's home will look like in medieval times. So there's big animals in the world. Look at this etching on the wall describing stories as they do in the medieval times, right? They etch these on the walls. These are scribes writing down their history. Here's a local lord, right? Probably some, stories, right? How many times I mentioned stories? Something's happening here. So me as an audience, I look at this and I'm starting to go into this world. I start to wonder what's happening here. So much more interesting than regurgitated generic stuff. Okay, here's a king and queen. Love this throne chair design using the big animals' bones to create some of these furnitures. Love it, love it. Look at this big bed using that elk horn for the bed cover. Oh, I hope you guys could tell, man. I love this stuff, man. As an instructor, that's why I kept teaching. It's so fun because I see these things on the walls, and it's like, dude, this is like being in an art department with 100 designers, you know, and everyone's bringing this fun stuff on the table. It's constantly entertaining. Look at these artists drawing the etching medieval style onto the walls. Absolutely beautiful. So. All right, a few more and then we'll wrap this up. Here's another student of ours did so his story, right? Because we're talking about stories, so I can share with you. His story is like the 1920s as well, middle of America somewhere. And this logging company is cutting down wood to build new houses, right? As they do during the early 1920s as America started developing its land. But however, in the forest, there's little animals, little fairies that these woodcutters are basically harming. And this girl here, her job is to go and save them because she could communicate with them. Right? Really cute little story. So look at all the personal stuff we put into this. Oh, wrong letter again. Right, the things I talked about last week. Personal story stuff. Getting the IP to go beyond just the visual pass. Start to really get into the story. There's one more here. All right. So here's the main bad guy, you know, the logging dude. So look, he has all these animals to signal that he's not a kind person because, you know, if you have animals in your office, you probably don't like animals, right? Or your heart is not very, very nice. So we put that there and look at the lighting. We put the lighting on the bottom. These are things our art director, they're designed. So these are things that, you know, companies like Disney, DreamWorks, they love these kind of keyframes because it has design, it has storytelling, it has good composition, it's just got everything that a company wants. Okay, beautiful stuff. Here's them shipping like TNT or something to kill the fairies. The girl is hiding over here, and the big boss is laughing. Right? I remember looking at this and just being so entertained by it because I'm like, dude, you're gonna go work at Disney or something. This stuff is so good, right? This is the forest house where she first found the evidence that these little creatures existed. So here's some sketches of those forest creatures. Okay. Beautiful stuff. So with this last slide, let's get into the education side. Let's start to get serious here. I've been showing a lot of behind the scenes, showing a little bit of student stuff. Hopefully it's starting to resonate with you what entertainment design is about. So let's talk about what I see today in the industry. Boom. Okay. The first thing I see, okay, in portfolio is, as I mentioned earlier, there's now a strong focus on technical skills instead of design. Okay, focusing on tools and all that kind of stuff. Technical skills. How do I render stuff well? How do I light stuff well? Versus, how about your design? How about get your design to be cool first before you render all this stuff up? So this is one. Two, okay, design literally becomes a form exercise. So what does that mean? It means that there's nothing deeper other than a form. Okay, and later I'll do some quick demos for you guys to show how easy this stuff is. Okay, find an interesting form and we render it. That's it. How does it work? How does it do anything? How does it tell a story? None of it. Okay, it's just a form. Next, spending most of the time on 3D software and rendering. Okay, jump into Blender, jump into 3D Max or Maya, whatever it is. Nowadays, jump into maybe Unreal, right? Now, professionals, we all do that. Okay, but if you're a student and your focus is this first, okay, this first and technical skill first, and this is last, something's wrong here. And that's what these portfolios are doing. Okay. Yes, you can use the software really well. You can light it really well. But what's the content? You're lighting something that has no value. Okay. So maybe you could work in VFX as a 3D lighter, but if you want to be a designer, you need this. Design. Okay. Okay. Next. Okay. Lack of story element. Almost zero. Okay. Like I said, I asked these students, why did you do this piece? What is it for? What kind of world it is? I remember just in Paris, I was asking a few of these students the same question. They couldn't answer it. They don't know. I go, why'd you do this piece? They're like, I just thought I just draw it. I go, what? Okay, so what's happening here? Who is this person? They don't know. Because when they did it, they're only thinking about using this as a technical exercise to just render something. But design really wasn't existing. So there's no storytelling. Okay. And of course, the last one, no entertainment value. Okay. This piece that in the portfolio serves no purpose. It has no content. If I take away the flashy stuff, there's nothing underneath it. Okay, so what causes this problem, in my opinion? Okay, this is my opinion of what is causing this. Okay, one, oops, I got the right layer here. Okay, widely available tutorials and examples online. And the reason why I think it's got worse and worse over the years is because it's regurgitating itself now. Okay, because this kind of content is easy to do, and I'm going to do a demo for you shortly to do that. Okay, because it's easy, then maybe someone got pretty good at it. Even as a student, they could get pretty good at it. And then they'd be like, hey, I could just make tutorials online, how to render a scene in 30 minutes, right? These kind of clickbait, kind of topics, everything's like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, how to render a character in 1 hour, So you get a lot of clicks. And then they're demoing the same process they use. And someone else sees that and they go, hey, this is pretty cool, I'll do it. And that just self-regurgitates. And over time, over these few years, it just becomes, everyone's doing the same thing now, right? In fact, this is not what concept art is. And it sometimes makes me kind of mad when I see the things like how to become a concept artist, and the content is not even concept art. It's just a rendering, okay? There's no concept at all in this kind of stuff. So again, we do this stuff in the industry. I've done demos on this, but I always say this demo is a demo on how to render, how to do digital painting. You do something simple to learn the technique. Once you have the technique, the skills, now you take that skill and put it into your design. So drawing these simple things or rendering is totally fine if you know what you're doing, in what phase you're doing it in. But if that ends up in your portfolio, then there's something wrong here. You're basically using your technical skills as your portfolio, and studios don't care for that. These companies don't want that. They want actual content. So this is one of the causes, right? Tutorials like self-driving, tutorials doing tutorials. So then that becomes a loop. Second, which I mentioned a little bit earlier, emulating designer versus learning from the real world. So instead of being out there looking at books of real world things, machines, animals, humans, whatever you want to look at, right? Everything is like, let's go to ArtStation and find some designer that they got cool stuff and start ripping them off. Okay, so that's a big problem as well. And it's actually a really big problem because, again, so many of these students, I could even tell who they're ripping, like which designer they're actually copying it from. I think one of the most copies, like Ian McHugh, you guys know him, the guy who draws the flying boats with the engines on the bottom. My goodness, how many times have I seen his stuff being copied by students, right? They kind of change it slightly, but you could tell where they're getting it from. It's like, oh, you got a flying boat, the engine is flying through some city. It's like, okay, I know where you're getting this from, okay? Nothing creative, just regurgitating other people's work. All right, next one, skipping the idealization and sketching. This is almost non-existent. I ask the students, I go, in your portfolio, do you have some sketches or some roughs I could see? They go, no, I don't really have that kind of stuff. The reason, because they're not even doing it. If they're jumping into the rendering so quickly without really figuring out what the design is, and that's why they skip this. Even though this is the most vital stage ever, this is how you get your ideas in the first place, by thinking it out, by idealizing, by sketching all loose stuff, finding what it is, then we start to render. Remember, the rendering with the image is the last step. Everything before it is the most important, but these students are placing the last step as the most important, which is the how to make it look pretty. Okay, no design, no ideas, no idealization, none of that. Who cares, right? Let's just render it. You defeat the whole purpose of what design is. All right, let's go next one. Minimum function design experience, right? These are, again, all the causes, right? So if you don't understand how things work from the real world, then how are you going to design? So there is no design. So the only thing you could do is render a big form of some kind, okay? We don't know how things work. We don't know how jets fly, how airplanes work. Maybe to a very simple degree, but definitely not to the geeky degree that you need to be a designer. So later I'll mention why this industry is so hard, right? Because I saw some comments, some people saying, oh, to become a concept designer, you have to become like an engineer. To a certain degree, you do, okay? Concept designer in the industry we're in, you have to be kind of a fashion designer, you have to be a furniture designer, you have to be a vehicle designer, you have to be like a landscaper, you have to be a kind of, what do you call it, set decorator, you have to be a lighter, you have to be a cinematographer, you have to be all those hats. I remember even in Art Center, I'm talking to some teachers and they're saying, yeah, this industry is hard. Okay, you have to wear so many different hats to do this job, and you have to do them all kind of well to survive in this business. If you don't do these kind of things, you're gonna have a very hard time competing. Okay, let's do the last one here, which is not considering the audience. Right, like I mentioned earlier, you're designing this to show other people in the same industry. It's like, oh, let me show my friend who's also at ArtStation or something. It's like, what about the audience? Why is this piece even being done? Okay. There's nothing happening here. You're not entertaining anybody versus just showing a rendering and maybe getting likes on social media because it looks flashy. But are you getting jobs? Are you getting companies who notice you? If those companies are noticing you and or directors noticing you, this content really isn't doing much to push your career forward. Okay. So here's the typical student pipeline. Okay. Now that I mentioned what I see in portfolios and what the causes are, let me give you a typical, and I put creative in parentheses because really it's not creative at all. But this is what I'm seeing, especially for environmental design, okay? Step number one, finds a form, usually really big. Let's just do this. to show you. Let me do one. Let's do width like 1200 and height at, let's just see what this is. All right, good enough to show you how, I guess, how widespread this stuff is. Why is it in CMYK? Hold on, let me put this to RGB. Guess it doesn't really matter, but who cares? Let's just fix it. Okay, so these are things I couldn't do in Paris because of time limitations, but I really want to do it to just show you. Okay, so let's do a layer. Okay, so step 1, find a form. Ready? So I'm not gonna think about design, I'm not gonna think about story, I don't think about anything. I don't care why this thing even exists. I'm just thinking I just need a big form. Okay. Big form, and generally it's a tower, mountain, something of that sort. Okay. Here we go. Okay, form exercise. Remember I mentioned form exercise. What did these things do? Who cares? What is this thing? Why does it exist? Who lives here? How does it even function? What does it support? If people live here, how do they get their food? Blah, blah. Who cares? Okay, it's not in the. We don't want to think about that because it's too hard, right? We want to do the simple stuff here. All right, here's my form, and if you want to do a simple perspective, just copy and put another one in the distance. Okay, and flip it. Oops, I need to press function key. Okay, flip it. Make it slightly smaller. And one more for good measure. Here we go. I want to do this in Paris so bad, but there's no time because I want to demonstrate how brainless this stuff is. Okay, so you guys might see like, hey, but pros have this stuff. Of course pros have it because it's fun, it's easy. We don't want to do the hard stuff when we're relaxing, right? So pros do a lot of this stuff because it's relaxing for them, but most of them don't do this for a job because most of it doesn't even exist in real products, right? Like recently, what came out, like Fallout, the TV series. Do you guys see this kind of stuff? Big giant? No, there isn't. The biggest thing I saw in that show was maybe the Vault when they first came out, but even that is not ginormous in scale. Okay, so this stuff is like really done for fun by the professionals. Well, there am I in. Okay, here we go. Right? Because it's fun. But if you're doing this to get a job, oh, good luck, because this stuff doesn't even exist in the industry. Right? Barely any IPs need this. Okay, so here's my step 1. Let's go to step 2. Okay. Step 2, jump into 3D. So right now I don't have time to jump into 3D. Let's assume that I model this now in 3D. Okay, let's just assume that. Boom, boom. Okay, so if we modeled it, we're going to render out a gray pass. Okay, so let's do that. Oops, let's do this one. Let's turn this to black and white. This is going to be pretty fun. I wanted to do this so bad in Paris to just demonstrate to everyone. Okay, all right, so let's do this. Okay, so I'm going to render output a 3D thing. Let's do this real quick. Today's episode is going to be pretty long because we're doing things like this, but this is what makes it fun. Pardon me as I do some lassoing here. Just like how you spit this out in 3D. We're going to have some channels rendered out from it. What am I doing here? Okay, that. Okay, let's fill those in. Okay, let's do the front one. Fill that in. Whoa, too many buttons. Okay, that's my layer there. Okay, and for good measure, we need a gradient in the background, right? So this is going to be a raw render from the 3D. Oh, we're going to pretend it's 3D. Yeah, what happened? Oh, because this is red. Okay, that's good. Let me reverse it. All right, so there's my 3D output. Pretend that's a 3D output. Okay, next step. Render scene with epic lighting, right? So, all right, so we could do this in 3D as well. We could do in Photoshop. Epic lighting, typically, we're gonna cut a ray of light behind everything. Okay, let's bring this light in. Okay, 45-degree angle, cut. Some of that light's gonna hit, let's just put it over here. Some of that light's gonna hit our object. Okay, little pieces here and there. Okay, let's Let's highlight this. We'll have to light this really nice, right? So let's start doing the high contrast lighting, okay? Here, put this on multiply. Try to do this as quick as possible so we could get to the rest of this slide. But this is important. But I'm going to show you. This is I'm doing to a certain degree what a lot of students are doing their portfolios, right? You know, obviously they spend a little bit more time than mine, but look how simple this stuff is. Okay, let's render this with some clouds. Where's my clouds? All right, here we go. Please don't crash Photoshop as I do this demo. Okay. Blink. We're gonna put this so a high contrasts somewhere over here. Let's put another cloud. Let's switch it to like this. What's my cloud? This one. Okay, let's put that one over there. Put one over here. Put one over here. Okay, then we're gonna put the lighting. Let me just save this in case. Demo, just in case it crashes. Okay, let's bring up the lighting because we're doing epic lighting. So we gotta do a really bright light coming from left or right side of the camera. Right. Again, I teach this stuff, right? I have design cinema on this, but remember, this is for learning how to render. But you shouldn't put this stuff in your portfolio, especially is 100% of your portfolio is this stuff. Okay. Because look, I didn't use any brain cells right now at all. This is just pure mechanical skills here, technical skills, right? Just chatting with you guys. Don't have to think about anything. So the only thing I think about is just draw it well, you know, to a certain degree, and then use this typical entertainment setup to render this. Okay, which is foreground, background, midground, 45-degree lighting, dark in the front, lighter in the back. Okay, let's do this. I'm doing this in black and white. Black and white, so it's a little bit simpler, a little bit easier. Let me put this over here. Let me mask this inverse. Almost done, almost done. Okay, epic lighting. Look at that epic lighting, 45-degree. Da, 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 da. Okay, let's put some fog back there so we could put some atmosphere fog, right? Put that out. My line. Let me reduce the line work down a bit. Push that guy way to the back. Okay, let's put higher contrast on these guys. Just a little bit more. All right, so okay, what's the next one? Number 4. So we did final form, rendering 3D, put epic lighting. Okay, next one. Okay, add lots of textures, especially rusted overgrown. You guys know exactly what I'm talking about here. Okay, so it's basically let's make it rusted or post-apocalyptic. Okay, so let's do some of that. Maybe it's like dead trees or something. Let's put one close. Too big. Cut right through that epic lighting right there. Okay, let's do some. I got my grass brush somewhere over here. Here's my grass. Here's one over here. Okay. Make like old trees and whatever grow up, you know, crawl up this thing. Switch my brush here. Yay. Dangling things, right? Dangling plants and wires and whatever you want. It's all destroyed. It's got to be destroyed because it's easy. Okay. Let's put some other details on here. Little radio tower. Who cares what this is, right? It's just a shape. I don't care what it is. I don't want to use my brain, right? I just want to render something and focus on rendering really, really nicely. Okay. Let's put some bounce lighting here. Bounce light, right? So all the technical skills, gonna put all in here. Here we go. All right, let's put this on background so you can see it easier. Almost done here. Almost done here. All right, texture details. At this point, you know, I don't want. This is not a demo video, but we'll probably use some textures, photo textures or whatever, to get some of these textures in here. Let's get the shadow of that one in there. Some last minute hits of light, really bright light hitting this stuff. Burn that out. A little too much, I think. Too much makes it look like it's not big. Okay. Some bounce light from the opposite angle, right? Typical entertainment lighting. Okay. Fill light, key light, bounce light, you know, all this ambient occlusion, right? All the stuff that you need to do. Okay, you need to do that. But remember, you have to use it on a good design. I'm here using it on a nothing design, okay? To serve a purpose, to show you guys why this stuff has no content. Okay, here we go. I have no idea what this is. Okay. Okay, last step. Let's check. Number 5. The best one ever. Add a small figure on the bottom for your story. Okay, that's it. Okay, we gotta add this little guy. The funny thing is, I made this slide before I went to Paris, obviously, right? Because I'm presenting there. And I made all these things. And when I got to Paris 2-3 weeks after I made this presentation, they asked me to review student portfolios. And remember last episode, you guys watched it, of almost all the portfolios, literally they were just doing all this. There was one or few students, 100% of their portfolio was this. Big form, rendered in 3D with epic lighting. It's rusted or overgrown, some post-apocalyptic thing, and a little dude looking at this big structure. Seriously, 100% of the portfolio. And none of these big structures were designed to do anything. I asked the student, I go, what is this for? What does this place do? Who lives here? What does this tower do? No idea. Just render the scene. Okay, so let's go to our last one. We gotta do number 5, the most important. Okay, where did my image go? Here we go. Ready? Here comes the story. Go away. Why is this here? Whoa. Hold on a second. I need to edit this out. It's like it's opening my windows here a second. Okay, sorry about that. Let me get back here. I pressed the window key by accident. Okay, so let me see. Ready? The most epic part. Let's put the person like right here. And the stick figure guy, actually, I have something to blame with that, right? That's something I started way back in Arsenal. I was doing demo, the guy with the stick. We put this guy really there was just for scale, okay? And that was also during the time in which we're demoing how to do basic compositions in entertainment design, right? It was never meant that this thing was supposed to be, you know, what you put in every single scene, right? We do this just for scale. Okay, let's put that guy in there. Let's put some wind in and blow in there. For good measure, let's put like another one like way further. Let's put a road in here. Okay, later I gotta go back and edit. It's like it was all like opening up the windows and stuff like that. So we're gonna close that down a bit. We'll edit that out so it doesn't look all confusing. That. Okay, so then we put like some other little figures way in the distance. Wee little guys. Yep. That's it. Oh, let's put it. Might as well put a spaceship flying around. Pew pew pew. Okay. Who cares what design is? Just a form. Hit by some epic lighting as well. Right. Let's put another one further away. Gotta put epic lighting on it as well. The 6 o'clock sunset lighting. Right. Put another one over here. Don't crash, don't crash. Okay. Right, gotta streak some, you know, what do you call those things? Little chemtrails in the air. Okay. Another one going across the sky. You know, just generic epic sci-fi things. Alrighty, we're almost done. Let's put some I'm just gonna add a little bit of lighting here on the clouds here. See, this stuff is formulaic. Okay, if you do this enough, you can just regurgitate this stuff. It's quite easy. Okay, that's why pros, you know, myself included, we do these for fun. It's really entertaining. Because we could kind of turn off our brain a little bit and just enjoy the rendering process, because during the day we do stuff that are so hard that burns your brains out. That's nice to go home and for your personal project do some of these kind of things, right? But this is not what we do every day at our jobs, okay? Very, very few projects needs this kind of stuff, right? They just don't. I mean, you can use your common sense. Look at the products that are out there and see, do they have these things? You know, do they have designs like this in it? Oh, what's going on here? My brush. Acting funny. Oh, here we go. And the thing is, most projects don't have them, but yet they're all over student portfolios. Okay. And that's a problem. All right, we are done, right? So obviously this is a 10-minute schedule or whatever time I took to do this, but this is generally the stuff I'm seeing, and I saw so much of this stuff, and right now this is all over the industry. Okay, something to this degree. You could replace this tower with castle, mountain, alien structure, big industrial, looks like some kind of factory, with that thing as well. These are all the things I've seen. Landing platform, right? But whatever it is, it's some kind of big structure. If it's sci-fi, then it's sci-fi looking. If it's ancient, it's generally a castle or something like that. If it's landscape, it's a big mountain or a big cliff. That's it. Then there's always some little dudes in front of it, and that's your story. Okay, this is not it. This is not what the portfolio is about. Okay. Because if you're doing this, guess who else could do this really, really, really well right now? And we just talked about this, AI. Okay, so this is done, before my last episodes. I prepared this, a few months ago. So you can look at this. Even back then, I was digging up some stuff on the internet, and they could really do this well. Also, big structure, silhouetted, dark, medium light with a little, even the AI knows to put little figure over here, right? They all have this, right? Because it's learning from these regurgitated images. See, it knows to put this little dude over here, right? Big structure, don't know what this thing does. And this looks pretty cool. It's pretty interesting stuff. There's some usage for this, right? But overall, these things don't solve anything. It's just a form exercise. And I try to pick pretty good looking one. This one's missing a little dude, right? But these are all AI generated. So, going back to your portfolio, if this is what you have in your portfolio and you're wondering how come no studio contacts you, how come there's no jobs, you must think the industry must suck, right? Everyone's getting replaced by AI. But if this is what you're doing, yes, of course that's happening. Because what value are you adding if your stuff, and the sad thing is, right? Where's my other piece here? The sad thing is, a lot of student stuff I saw, the AI is doing a better job at it. Do you know what I'm saying? Because both of them are the same. It's like, okay, you got a big structure, AI's got a big structure, but AI is rendering it better than the student work. So what chance do you actually have at this point? Which is zero, okay? Because this kind of content, have nothing. There's nothing. And you could tell today I'm probably pretty worked up in this episode here, because it's getting to the point where it's like, I just got back to Facebook. I have so many freaking private messages in there asking me to review their student portfolios. And when I review them, I already know what I'm about to see. I'm betting with myself. I bet this one's going to be a big structure thing. And it is. Okay, because most people that make me look at portfolios are environment artists. Generally, I don't get too many illustrators or character artists. It's always like hard surface people. So when I review it, it's almost like 9 out of 10. It's actually not 9 out of 10, 99 out of 100 or something like that. It's something of this, right? And these students are saying the industry sucks. We're going to do our job to AI. And what I'm thinking is like, probably, yeah, because what are you doing? What are you bringing that company actually want to use? Nothing, okay? You're not actually doing real design. So let's talk about solution here. So I'm just going to save this one, close it. Let's bring some actual answers here. Okay. So how do you avoid this? Well, I'm going to share with you a little bit of what we teach at the school, and something we've been doing for this since 2009. I guess the pipeline that we used to teach. So let's go back to this slide here. Okay. You want to take some notes on this now because this is really critical here. So what are the things we teach? Okay. We teach the 5 W's, okay? What, where, when, who, why. Notice the last 2 here are highlighted in blue. Why is that? It's because these 3 here is actually quite easy to do. You could teach almost anyone could do this because all I got to do is look at reference and know some of the technical skills, like I mentioned, perspective and all this stuff, right? Once you know this, you could do almost all of our students generally do pretty well here. The last 2 here are very hard because both of these now touches upon story, right? Last episode, we talked about this as well. Why will touch a little bit about function, who talks about the experience, right? And we'll discuss that a little bit, okay? So notice I put T1, T2. This is how we break it down in terms. So our school is a 1-year program. Each term is about, how long? 14 weeks, about 4 months. Okay, so 4 months equals 12, right? So this is our program, 1 year. So notice we teach the easy stuff first. Okay, get the students into just doing what, where, when. So term 1 covers pretty much that. Starting term 1 and starting term 2, we do a little bit of where and when. But once we get to term 2 and 3, when they're building their portfolio, we don't do this anymore. We only do these 2. okay? Because this is the hard stuff. This is the stuff that I know could get them jobs. So now let's break down what each of these are. So if you go back to the tower, let me open that real quick. Okay, notice this tower answers these things. It barely answers these two. Okay, it only answers a little bit of this. Okay, what is it? Okay, I'm looking at tower. So let me break down what each of these are. But it doesn't answer this at all. Who lives here? Who experiences? Nothing. Okay, why does it even exist? Nothing. Okay, because this is hard. And when it's hard, most people don't want to do it. Okay, and then you complain you can't get a job. Yeah, exactly. If it's easy, everyone's doing it. Okay, so okay, let's break this down. What is the first one? What? Okay, so what essentially is your oops, wrong one. Let me close that one so it doesn't get in the way here. Doink. Okay. So what are we looking at? Okay, so this is your 3-second rule in general. So when the audience look at this, they have about a second or two to realize what they're looking at. It's your first reaction. So to make this work, you have to know your fundamentals. For example, your basic lighting, your basic perspective, your basic forms, right? Those are simple stuff. And notice we make our students draw from the real world because this is term 1. I already mentioned in Art Center, we did the same thing. We don't draw made up stuff that early. It's too dangerous to make students start to do things that are just creative because they don't even know how the real world works first. So we do perspective assignments and draw throughs and all this. We look at real world. So that way they're starting to learn. And as instructors, we generally tell them a little bit about these kind of things, right? And we used to have a class in which students have to explain to us, for example, this tall ship, what year was it made? Who sailed it? What country does it belong to? So that way everybody learns because remember, they're pitching this in front of classmates. So not only is the student learning this, the rest of us learn as well. And being in this school, I learned a ton of stuff just from students pitching ideas that I never knew about, right? So anyways, yeah, look, these are real world stuff, real architecture, so students can learn. And at the same time, they're just practicing the what, okay? So as you look at this, you could tell, okay, it's a temple, you could tell that's a ship, that's a train, that's a plane, that's a car, right? Simple things, that's the what, okay? What also teach students how things work. So what does it do? Okay, let me go right there here. Okay, so another thing we do is instead of just making students draw, for example, samurai armor, we start teaching them what does this whole package consist of. Very early beginning or early phases of teaching them storytelling. Okay, so instead of just drawing the samurai armor, what does a samurai have if they go out on a horse? So they have their saddles, they have their arrows, they have their bows, they have so I don't even know what this is, So some pretty cool stuff here, right? So students start to research this stuff and starting to put in a package. We call this package presentation. So students can pick any subject matter and then tell a visual story, all real world. Okay, don't make stuff up. I don't want to see aliens. I don't want to see sci-fi. From the real world, show me a little package. So this is a perfect example of one. So that way the students are starting to learn more about what we are looking at. Okay, and they're also learning about storytelling because once they have this in their mind, they could turn this into science fiction. They could turn this into medieval fantasy, okay? Because the same kind of thinking process applies here. So here's another one for like a 1800s, I'm guessing, landscape painter, right? So you can see here's the stuff that they go out with, their little pens and pencils, their pen mixer, all their paints, their brushes, their food for lunch. I mean, look at this, so cool. It's got a banana, some sandwich, beautiful stuff, and the students are telling us about this, and I could tell they're going down the right path. If you're starting to think like this, you're going to think about design, okay? And here's some other stuff we teach. How does things get put together? Okay, here's a 3DS, here's a PSP. Now, we don't need them to be engineers, okay? But we do want them to have I guess, a certain understanding of that things are not just randomly bashed together, okay? There's logic. So once you have this logic, and if you're making up a spaceship or you're making up a device in the imaginary world, there's a logic how this thing's manufactured, right? Or if it's an ancient world, the logic how it's sculpted, what material they're using. Is it wood? Is it carved? Is it chiseled out of stone? So students are starting to think about that versus just random stuff, okay? So that's the what. Next is where, okay? You've probably seen on our website, we have a lot of these kind of cutaways because where is generally interior and exterior. And very early on, we teach students to start to associate the two together. So if you're in a, for example, jungle environment, okay, then what kind of material are we using? So at the same time, they're learning about architecture and so forth, they're also learning about logic, okay? So, and also placement. So we could tell, okay, we are in a jungle. we are in a cabin, and the layout and the logic is starting to make sense. This is all early. This is term 2 stuff, so there's still some mistakes in here. Like I'm noticing some scale issues here, right? This thing looks kind of big, but it's okay. Student work. They'll get better later, okay? So, but they're doing the right stuff here. Let's see the logic of kitchens, right? Living room, bedroom, research area, where TVs are placed, right? It's starting to come alive. Little bit story is starting to show up here. Okay, very minimal, but it's starting to show up. So yes, this stuff is kind of boring. This is not grand stuff, flashy stuff, you know. But man, is it teaching the students how to think. Okay, so here's another one, like how does where are we? We're in the forest and we have these little creatures. How do they live here? How do they survive here? Okay, start to solve those problems. Here's a, because remember we're doing where, right? If you have to do a mobile, for example, I think this design is a vehicle that could do a civilian job or help something, right? Cannot be military because we try to avoid military stuff. So this is a mobile vet, right? As you can see here, it goes in neighborhoods and helping pets like a hospital. So we got to solve the where and how to solve those issues. For example, if you're in a neighborhood, we cover the sun, we have a chair for the doctor to sit in, right? We have little things to put pets in, to feed them water, all that kind of stuff. Starting to put logic and storytelling into the designs. Here's one in which a vehicle has to help people in a flood. So where we are, we're in the flood, and then we have to have a design that solves this problem. Again, avoiding military stuff if we can. Okay, we try to do everything civilian because civilian stuff is hard. Okay, all right. Now we get into the hard stuff. Oh, this is when. Forgot. Okay, so we got the what, where, when. When is time period. So in these kind of classes, we're starting to teach students how to use reference from the real world to see what kind of reference we take to explain the time period and the technology that we're looking at. So this is a little Viking period here. Here's a 1980s, 1990s kind of Japanese racer car, right? So you could tell this is starting to have technology and shape. Here's a ship, little boat, I'm guessing from the 1800s, maybe early 1900s, right? All the materials that goes on it, all the logic that has to go with it. So why do we teach this? So that way, by looking at your designs, we could kind of tell, even if it's made up, right? Right now, this is all real world, minus this one, right? But if it's real world, you could take the same kind of thinking process into an imaginary world. So if it's sci-fi, we could tell what kind of science fiction is it? Okay, is it Blade Runner kind of science fiction? Is it Star Wars type of thing? Is it like real world science fiction like The Martian, right? By learning how to think this way, how to solve problems, you could start using when correctly versus like the little demo I just did with the rock things. There's nothing. There's nothing to answer because I'm not putting any of this stuff in it. Okay, and now you could start to look at your own work and see, are you putting this stuff in your work? So the top 3 are done. Now comes the hard stuff. Who? Okay, and we do this in multiple things. So who is here? That means if you have a design, I'm showing a lot of environments, but this applies to costume design and vehicle. It's the same thing. Okay, so for environment design, you could tell even without a character being here, we could tell who is here, and that is starting to develop story. We could tell by looking at details, right? Look at this here. So we go up here. It looks like some kind of assassin, right? Look, they got like these weapons. They have knife that they're practicing onto the boards here. They have a flying device that they're kind of making. They're sewing stuff here in the corner. More weapons being made on the tables here. So by looking at these design details, we could start to formulate a story in our heads, which is, I think, some kind of thief or some kind of assassin that's building some device to aid on their missions, right? It might not be 100% correct, but I'm pretty sure that's exactly where this IP is going. That's really, really good for the students to start to think about, okay? So we're not just doing some generic thing. This is what video games need. This is what films need, okay? This is what animation needs. Remember the stuff I talked about last week, what AI can't do? This level of storytelling is way too nuanced for a machine to come up with. This requires a human touch, okay? I mean, you guys could try to put this in AI, but we tried. It can't do. There's no way. It can't do to this level, okay? It comes with very generic stuff. So maybe it'll get better over time, but in the meantime, no way, okay? This requires design. And remember, these are students, man. We're not even looking at professional level work. These are student stuff, right? This is the one I showed last week about the dam, right? Who's using this, right? There's a kingdom, and they control this dam water thing. Here's some character stuff, right? Everything is about who's here. Here's a kitchen, right? You can see where they cook the food, where they eat the food. Lots of storytelling happening here, right? All right, so how do we move to this space, right? again, a person, if I'm a character, if this is a video game, how do I experience this space as I move through it? Okay, so you can see we're trying to make it as visually interesting as possible. So it's not a straight line, it's a square room, right? We're trying to make every space, look at this one here, interesting. Always go up. We generally have elevations, right? I talked about this, I think, in episode 109, if you look at it, or 108, you guys can look at it, right? We try to design lighting in there. So even though this might look simple to some of you, it's like, oh, this is not flashy, but man, there's a lot of stuff happening here. That's all design. For example, if you're standing here, we design these two windows so that way they could create silhouette to silhouette a selling point. And then to your right side, we have another lighting spot with the chair, so this will be highlighted, right? If it's backlit, this chair will be highlighted. Creates an interest point. For example, we could put an NPC here in the chair, allowing the players to either go here as choice A. They could also go here, choice B. This corner is lit by practical lights, a little bit darker, so this will be a choice C. Okay, and then they'll go this way. This is all designed for gameplay. Okay, because this student wanted to work in video games, so I'm art directing him on how to make that work. Okay, something so simple, but yet it is really hard to do. Let's see. Okay, so that's the who, and also, okay, what are the points of interest, which I just pointed out. Okay, something, again, AI has a very hard time doing. In my last episode, this is the hierarchy design, if you remember. Okay, the step 1, step 2, step 3 reveals. Okay, so not only do we have to do functional design and logic design, we have to do gameplay design and reveal designs, right? Trust, this student right now is working on a project, but he won't tell me what it is because he's signed an NDA. But I think I just got an email from him, so I think it's gonna move to another studio pretty soon. They're all doing pretty fine out there. Okay, so let's go to the next one here. And then, of course, why is this even entertaining? Gotta ask this question. Why am I even doing this? Okay, what's the story taking place? Why should I explore it? Okay, so these are things you do. It's like, if you look at this, is it even fun to look at? Okay, so like I remember looking at this one, the Jack the Ripper, burial vehicle. I go, this is pretty cool. I go, all right, this is pretty cool. Some satanic things going on here. Oh, I should save this soon. I saw it lag. Okay, anyways, I love the little details in the canes and the digging tools that they got going on here. Right, this little kitchen with a little anime girl cooking. The story that's happening here. Beautiful little stories, right? It's entertaining me. It's making me start to see into this world. And this is exactly what I want from our students. And this is exactly what studios want from them as well. All these students are out there working on great stuff. Right? This is the girl. Last week I said that she's working on Riot. She's actually doing Valorant, that other competitive arena game. So she just worked on a map that they released, the Thailand one that she emailed me about. So I took a look at YouTube. It's pretty cool, right? You can just see a lot of her influence in that map. So you can look it up. Go to, I forgot what the map is called, but it's a Thailand map for the game Valorant. Okay, so once you have all those 5 W's, right? What, where, when, who, why, then you could do a keyframe or production painting to put it all together. Here's the previous room that we saw earlier. Now lit well, render well. This is the thing that shows your technical skills, right? So all our students, we need them to have the previous stuff, which is the design things. These are things to show 3D artists, right? To show production people how to actually build these sets, that you can solve solutions, that you can have your actual designs. And then these are generally shown to directors and producers to show them what this can actually look like, right? The pretty images. But this pretty image is very, very different than the pretty image I showed you earlier with the tower. Those pretty images have no content. So if I did a line drawing pass, or if I take away the lighting, there's nothing underneath. But these things, if I take away the lighting, take away all the renderings and just have a line drawing, it is still good. The content, it is still there. And that's the thing I want to drive home. The entertainment design is still here. Okay, it is not a rendering. So I hope some of you are going to look at your own portfolios and start to analyze it. Take away the flash, take away the 3D rendering, all that, and see, do you actually have value here? Do you have design content? Okay, so look at this stuff, right? Look at this kitchen, beautifully done, cute little kitchen. Take away the lighting, everything's still here. Okay, and notice our school, we don't have the big tower stuff. We don't have the giant forms, because last week I mentioned this as well. We design everything within human scale. Okay, things that are around me. So that way students have to really solve problems. They have to solve furniture design, layout in small spaces, because this is hard. The bigger something is, right, the bigger the structure, the less you have to do any of this. In fact, you don't do any of it. Everything just indicated, like the little demo I just did for you. I don't know what those little dots are on top of the building. They're just indicated. Then who's going to figure that out? You're gonna let the 3D team figure that out. They're not gonna like working with you. Okay, first of all, you're probably not gonna get the job because the studios don't want that kind of stuff. Right, for the seniors, they do. Right, I mentioned this before. The seniors do this kind of stuff because it kind of makes keyframes that inspires the project. But that generally lasts 2 months. I mean, not 2 months, 2 weeks to about a month, because pros are also extremely expensive. Okay, those paintings cost thousands of dollars for the studios, right? I was in those positions hiring pros to do those. So my budget could be maybe just $200,000, right? That 200 grand is going to run out pretty quick. Okay, I'm going to burn that probably within a week or two. So you can only do so many of those kind of pro things. And then you got to get down to actual designs. Then this is when designers come in. We got to start taking those big epic paintings and scaling them down into actual product scale. Okay, and now you need designers who could design. And this is when you hire junior designers, fresh graduates. Doesn't matter, seasoned pros. As long as they have the right content, we really don't care. And that's why students could still get really good jobs. So AI is not replacing junior artists. They're replacing junior artists who don't have content. They're not replacing junior artists with content. Okay, so anyways, these are some key arts that make our students do the last term. So this stuff is a little bit more flashy, a little bit more cooler looking. So they get jobs. This guy Brian, I think this is Brian's work, right? Brian Chan. He's over working at Firaxis, I think, right? Firaxis, working on Civilization 7, which is pretty cool. It's one of those games I actually play, so it's kind of cool that play some games that our students work on. So, all right, so that's that. So here's the last checklist of what you could look at. Okay, so if you look at your own work, notice I make these 3 things really small because these 3 are easy. If you only have what, where, and when in your portfolio, is not enough. You have to answer the who and the why, which is bringing the human experience, building the entertainment, the interactive designs, the entertainment value, and story elements. If you don't have this in your portfolio and only have basically shapes and forms, you're gonna have a really hard time finding work. Okay, I'm gonna demonstrate that shortly here with some sketches here. But even this interactive design, I want to talk about this real quickly. You know what this is. Okay, so I'll give you some quick examples from shows that maybe you have seen before. Let's get a blank piece of paper. Oops. Today we're drawing some stuff, right, to make it more clear. And then we'll take a break and finish this off. Okay, so remember the show Andor, the Star Wars show about a bunch of dudes in prison? Remember that? So what is experience? Because design, right? Again, I'm mentioning this one part. This is not for all designs. There's one part here. Okay, interactive designs. This is just one example of it that you could try to put in your portfolios. Okay, when we're designing, especially environments, where did my piece go out here? Okay, we're designing environments. You got A to B. Okay, now A and B has to be interesting visually. But what really the audience get to experience is this. This is called the experience. Okay. This is what's going to remember your show or your game about. Okay, very few is going to remember all the details you put in A and B. They'll have a general idea of it, but what's going to make it really fun is this. So let's use Andor. I think it's Andor. Did I spell this correctly? Andor. Okay, the Star Wars one. You guys know what I'm talking about. You know, the one where they're all in prison. Okay, they have a great design like this because oftentimes you don't have to change a lot of stuff at all. In fact, I mentioned this many times in design cinema. You could keep 90% of stuff logical to the real world. Change 10%. This 10% is your experience. Okay. Now I'm gonna deep dive into this in episode 114. It's coming. Okay. I have another one planned for 112. No, actually 113. It's coming. Okay. I have another episode 112 that I already prepared. 113. I'm gonna show you guys how to design all this kind of stuff. Okay. Really start to take you guys down a design path. Hopefully. Okay. So what is this? So in Andor, they have a hallway that's essentially a prison. It's shaped like this. Okay, it's a corridor with all these things, right? The cool thing is, you notice that prisons don't have a wall, right? They don't have bars in front. So what they did is they made their floors electrified. That's it. That's the only change. Why is that so important? Why is it so cool? Because that means this prison, this is your 90% logic. Okay? Audience watching this knows that this is a prison. You don't have to explain this to them. That's an easy sell, okay? What we call easy sell. What makes this fun is that the floor is electrocuted, so therefore it starts to change everything. they actually has entire episode dealing with how do they shut this thing down. So now your design is actually influencing the story. That's actually influencing the actors, right? You see how powerful a simple idea could be. So in this case, they don't have a door because the people inside cannot step outside, right? Because the floor is electrified. That's it. So this is the experience. For this actor to go from A to B, they have to go to this floor. Because this idea is simple, but yet it is good, these prisons could be a cylinder shape, it could be a square shape, it could be a triangle shape, it could be a long thing. It doesn't really matter. Do you know what I'm saying? So as art directors, once we find this, it's like, okay, find some cool shapes. You know what I'm saying? So that's why if you only have shape design, it's very dangerous because you're actually not doing this kind of stuff. This kind of stuff really pushes the IPs forward, because I've been in a lot of meetings in which I'm not even drawing. I'm just pitching these ideas. And the idea, once that's good, this could be anything, right? Like this floor, this hallway could be a shape like this. And these things could just be circle rooms, right? It doesn't matter because the idea always stays. Then that's why it's so important to have a good idea on a sketch or think it out first before you start rendering form, because these forms don't do much. This show would not change at all if these prisons were a circular room, right? Or rectangular room. It won't change anything because the idea is there. And that's what I mean. This is one of the examples for experience. Again, I'm going to dive deep into this thing in episode 113. Okay. Now, so this is the checklist. You know, you could put this on your wall and go through your own portfolios and see, do you satisfy that? And I'm guessing a lot of you guys might not. All right. So last week I already did this I did for Paris, right? So I won't go through this date. You could watch episode 110 to see go through this, but I do want to touch on this. Okay, the last one here, the human experience. Okay, because as I mentioned in the first slide, entertainment design comes from you. Okay, your experiences, your background, the things you like, your experiences, all those things you like, that's what builds these IPs. We want to see that in your work. Okay, so last slide here is you. Okay, so I found some generic images from the internet of my childhood, you know, playing Street Fighter 2. This is not my photo, just random photos, but I lived a very similar childhood. Okay, playing Nintendo in front of a TV, right? Going to a toy store with my friends and buying Star Wars toys. This is stuff that built who I am today. And I want to see that in your work, right? Here's some actual photos of me in the 1980s, right? So here's me in that's Griffith. Actually, this was in Fallout the other day, right? I don't want to ruin it, but the show Fallout actually features this building. This is the Griffith Park, right? So this is the 1980s. I think I'm 8, I don't know, 9, right? Very early Los Angeles here, climbing up Griffith Park. Here's me, I think in Yosemite maybe, or Sequoia National Park, because I also like nature, so wearing the Lakers, of course, because I'm from Los Angeles, so you gotta have the LA Lakers. I don't know where this is. Look at this 80s stuff, right? So you, that's what we want to see, okay? Put forth your ideas, your stories, and it doesn't have to be always fun stuff. You have maybe something tragic happen in your life, put that as a story. You have something happen in your life, put that as a story. Maybe you experience something really interesting in your life. Maybe you travel somewhere. Put that all forward. Don't worry about social media and trends and algorithms and stuff. If you like what you do and put that out there and really believe in your ideas, I think someone else will believe in it as well. So let me take a quick break here. I have one more thing I want to draw out for you guys, then we'll wrap this episode out. Okay, so I'll be right back. All right, and we are back. So remind everybody, entertainment design is you, okay? The spirit of entertainment is you. I really want to see this stuff coming forth from you guys, okay? And we're going to start recording some episodes based on that as well. 113, it's coming, okay? I'm going to start doing some examples of how we could build those kind of portfolios. All right, next is I want to visualize some stuff here for you guys to analyze the market a little bit. So I want to go back to that demo we did earlier, you know, with the big structure. Okay, and why that stuff is so dangerous. I want to visualize this. You can see why it's so important to start going on the right path for your portfolios. So let's do this. Okay, let's draw you. Okay, imagine this designer here, or quote unquote designer. Their portfolio is just big structures. Okay, with a little guy standing here. Okay, this stuff here is easy, so let's make a little chart here. This stuff is easy. Let me write this a little bit better. Okay, this stuff here is hard. So why is this easy? Because it only has the three things. What? When? Oh, my dog's here. Hope you don't hear his paws. Okay, where? Okay, it pretty much only answers these three. Just barely, by the way. Okay, barely answers these questions, but these are easy. So what makes the other side harder is because it has these three. Oops. Plus who and why. These two topics are hard. Okay, and because they're hard, most students don't do them. Okay, so now, why is that a problem? Because let's continue drawing this out. This student here has this. Now let's draw another one. Student over here don't have that. Okay, they actually have actual designs in their portfolio. Okay, solutions to things. Okay, whatever this is, it's a solution of some kind. Okay, and they have the storytelling and the whys in it. If you go to the easy side here, if you're doing something like this tonight, you know how many more people in this world are doing that too? Okay, so then it becomes this. Okay, you probably see where I'm going with this. Okay, it's like this. Let me just, it's not even this, it's way more than this. Okay, imagine just in Paris alone, I was reviewing student portfolios, and these students are not coming just from one school. So you can't say like, oh, that one school made them do this. No, they're coming from everywhere in Europe, right? So, and they all have the same content. So you can't say like, oh, they're all taught by the same teacher or something. No, they're coming from very diverse places, and yet their portfolios are all the same. So if you have this many people doing this, nobody stands out. Okay, and the only thing that makes someone stand out is maybe someone who renders better. Okay, so of these people, maybe this one here renders really, really well. And then this one here renders really, really well. This one renders pretty well. And then, this guy renders pretty well. And then we have one more. Okay, so the only difference between them is that these five here renders better. Okay, design content is all the same. As you know, the basics of economics, the more you have something, the less the value becomes, right? It's a demand and supply kind of thing. Because the supply is so high, let me move this over a little bit. Let me shrink some of this so we have space to write. Because we're going to get into a little bit of AI here as well, because you could probably already see where this is going. Okay. Your value drops. Okay. Essentially, with all this is mass production here. So you're becoming kind of like the McDonald's or something, right? It's like everything's low value because there's so many. So if you go from a client's perspective, okay, this is a client's. So before AI came along, what makes them choose these? Okay, probably the product is not so important, first of all. Okay, like they don't really value design that much. Okay, so they just need something that looks kind of pretty, so they'll hire from here. So when they hire from here, the first ones that gets their attention is the ones that renders well. These ones, right? Because it renders well. But if they're kind of a little bit expensive, we'll just go to the next one, right? So if this person here is charging 1,000 a day, we'll just go to one that goes 900. Maybe we'll get one that goes to 800. Oh heck, we'll just go to someone for 600. Maybe we could find one for 500. Okay, and then we'll tell the 500 guy, hey, can you do it for 300? Maybe this guy does it for 100. Eventually, you're gonna find someone who do it for $50 a day. Seriously, this is the price, because there's so many people who do this. These companies, they're not stupid. They know how this works. They know that if you don't do it, they'll just find someone else to do it. So, and they're gonna use that against you too. They go, hey, we got another designer here who's only charging 200 a day. Can you do it for 150? And because there's not enough, there's so many people doing this. You want that job too, right? You're kind of desperate to get that work. So you're gonna drop your rate. So you'll be like, okay, I'll do it for $100. And then somebody else will be like, I think I could do it for 75 a day. I'm seeing this happen. As a result, everyone's value goes down. Okay, it just goes, boo. Okay. Now, let's look at this side. All right, this is, let's hurry up and do this because everyone can already figure out what's going on here. The amount of people who do this stuff is way less because it's hard. Okay, it's maybe just that's it. Okay, let's just put this here. Okay, we could say like maybe one of these represents like 100 people or something, right? Something to that degree. So way less people. And I always told our students in our school, right? Each year we accept about 100 students. Even with those 100 students, we tell them, even if you guys, did everything correct in the interviews and said all the right things, there's still going to be about 10% of you who's going to drop out. And that number is pretty much true. Once they start finding out how difficult this industry is, they don't want to do it anymore. They're like, you know what? Maybe I don't want to do this anymore. It's too hard. It is hard. Any industry that pays quite well, that's pretty luxurious in a way, is pretty hard to get into. Okay, and design is definitely one of those. So this is not one of those jobs in which you wish it could happen, it could just get in. Okay, of course, from the outside, working on video games and films seems pretty fun, and it is fun. But if you want to be on this side, you have to be really, really good, especially now with AI coming onto the scene. You have to bring something to the table. So if your portfolio is not these kind of things and it's this kind of stuff, your chance of getting work is very, very high. Okay, and we have plenty of examples from our students who achieve that kind of goal. So now if you go to the company here, design to them actually is important. Oops, design is important. Okay, so if design is important, they're not even going to go after these guys over here. Okay, because there's no point. Okay, just like a lot of the jobs I get, I don't even look at this kind of stuff. In fact, I have a like kind of HR department. They already know. They know that I don't like that kind of stuff, so they don't even put it into the review, right? Because generally, like Mondays or Fridays, I'll review portfolios. They'll put on a big giant TV screen. So sometimes one of these will actually slip in because they're rendered quite well. By the first image, I'm like, no, next. Because I know this person probably cannot design. It's just flashy stuff, right? So these are the ones these companies are going to go for anyways. They're going to not go for that. But because the amount of people doing it is low, okay, these jobs generally just go to the very few people, right? And again, this doesn't mean they're experienced. They could be students. They could be offered 2-3 jobs at a time. Okay, sometimes you could get so many job offers, you have to just turn them down because you don't have enough time. Some of my friends, I'm not joking, you guys. Some of my friends, I try to hire them for projects. They'll tell me the next time they're available is like mid 2025. I'm serious. I'm like, what? I'm like, hey, I got a job coming up. You want to do it? It's like, let me check my schedule. I'm free July 2025. You're like, holy cow. You're like booked full. And because they're booked full, they get all the jobs. So if you're in this person's perspective, you're like, dude, the industry sucks. There's like no work. Right? There's nothing out there. But yet this person's like, I got 5 gigs that I don't have, nothing to do. Now, obviously right now the industry, especially in the film side, there's a little bit of a slowdown because of the writer's strike and all this kind of stuff, right? Industry goes through this stuff all the time. I've been through a couple of these before. But it's got to a point where it's never been like there's no work, right? Maybe it'll slow down a bit, maybe picking 1 or 2. And also, because the supply is low, the value is high. So this company here wants to work with these designers. Well, they have many jobs to choose from. So one of the ways to get you is your high rate. Okay, so if you're charging $1,000 a day, or this person is charging $1,200 a day, or whatever, right? Maybe you get a guy that charges maybe $800, right? This is generally the fluctuation of the high rate. You could go as high as $1,500 sometimes a day. Okay, most of these students don't have a choice because if they really want, for example, vehicle designers are really, really hard to get. Okay, like a really good logical one. Like you want to design a futuristic car in a movie like a near future movie, you need a car that's believable. There's only a handful of designers that could do this kind of stuff, and they're really, really expensive. Okay, so we have no choice. We have to just go to them. So and hopefully they'll give you like at least 2 days or something because you want them for a week. They don't even have that time. They have other shows to work on. So that's the benefit of working hard, right, during school or during your portfolio days. You build up a reputation that you could design, and then you're going to have a pretty good job front in front of you. Okay, I'm not saying this to lie to you guys. Okay, I've been in the street for so long. I work with so many graduates. I work with so many designers. This is what I see from my seat. Okay, and hopefully this visual graph will show you a little bit of the state of the industry. Now you think about from here. If a client don't care about design that much, guess which side of the client is going to use AI? Okay, obviously it's the left side here. When AI comes on the scene, or not when, now that AI is here, okay, let's not even talk about the ethics of it, right? Is it wrong? Is it right? The companies don't care. They're going to use it anyways, okay? So when they start using this, guess who they're not going to hire anymore? Is this, because they're already in that mindset, okay? They want to hire the cheapest designers they could get, right? Because there's so many to choose from anyways. But now we have this. They don't have to choose from this at all. They just choose this. Right? And that's why if you have this kind of portfolio, you're probably seeing a very bad field out there. It's like there's no jobs, there's nothing to do. I could totally see that happening because these companies are not going to hire you. And the thing is, these companies are hiring, but like I mentioned earlier, they don't look at your stuff. Okay, so you're going to be like, yeah, there's no one's hiring. It's like, yeah, because they're not even looking at your work in the first place. They're looking at these designers. Okay, like when I was in Paris, my friends who are in the industry, they're all working on stuff. They're all working on shows. You know what I'm saying? They're not saying, they're saying it's a little slow, especially on the film side, a little slow, but they're working. You know, on the game side, it's not even affected that much. I know like the triple A's and stuff. This is a whole other topic that I could probably talk about for hours. But, you know, game companies will sometimes fire many, many people because sometimes these projects, they get canceled, right? Sometimes it's the fault of the CEO, sometimes the producers, internal fighting, where the product doesn't test well. Who knows what the problem is? But these things come and go. Okay, last year was pretty bad because of over hiring during COVID and all that kind of stuff. But I've been through many of these up and downs in terms of industry hires and slowdowns and stuff. But we all survive through it. We all do pretty well through it. So you know, in the short term, yeah, it doesn't look so good. But in the long term, if you have a skill that's valuable, it's not going to go away. Okay, so let's go back to this one. These studios here, the chances of them using AI is pretty low. They might try it, but because their design is so important to them, AI currently couldn't solve it, as I said in the last episode. So they're going to have to go to designers. And again, they're not looking at this because these guys don't bring anything to the table, so why even look at them? So the world is pretty bad for this, right? If your own portfolio is in this zone, it's not looking so good. At this point, you have to decide, what do I want to do? Okay, if you're going to stick with this and the only thing is like, don't use AI, no matter what you say, these companies are going to use it anyways. That's not going to stop them. Okay, so it's up to you to say, okay, if I still want to be in this business, I still want to work on this, maybe I should start doing some design work in my portfolio. And that's what I told all the students in Paris. I go, you got to start doing design, man. Take baby steps. So what I'll do is in episode 113, I'm just let's go through some of this. Let's talk about how we can start take baby step towards good design. Okay, let's not jump into really hard stuff. 112 is coming next week. 112 is something I prepared almost a year ago. I just never recorded it. So I'm going to get that out for you guys, which also helps with this. And then 113, let's start talking about design. I want to get some of you guys to start doing this kind of stuff. Okay, this is slow. Okay, there's no clickbait stuff here. Okay, we're not going to do a rendering environment in 10 minutes. Okay, it's not going to happen. It's going to take hours. Maybe we'll do a 2-3 hour episode. Like I said, I'm not doing much these days. I'm not taking any gigs right now. My producer's like, dude, Feng, we have all these jobs. Okay, I'm not lying to you guys. I'm serious here. My producer's like, there's jobs. Do you want to do them? I'm like, no, I don't want to take anything. I'm still on my break. I'll do some design cinema first. Let me think about it. Maybe I'll start taking some gigs in October or something. But for now, I just want to do design cinema. So I got time on my hands. So episode 113, maybe it's like 3 hours long. I don't know, 4 hours long. Let's just draw stuff, okay? Because I want to get you guys to start thinking about this design and do my part to maybe help some of you realize your dreams of doing concept art, okay? But if you're over here, it's not going to happen. And with AI showing up, it's not even going to happen times 1,000, okay? So anyways, I think today's episode is running towards 2 hour mark. But this episode is very, very important to me. I want to do this for quite a while. Hopefully this helped you. I'm sorry that it's quite long. I probably repeated myself a bunch of times as well. But my teaching method is like this. Because for students, I find that you have to just keep repeating the same thing over and over and over for the idea to stick. If you mention it one time, sometimes they forget it. So in our school, we just keep saying the same thing, keep pressing the same point until they start to understand, okay, the teacher's telling me something I should probably pay attention to. Okay, so the takeaway from today's talk, if you want the short takeaway, is look at your work and ask yourself, are you doing these two things? If you're not, you probably should start. Okay, all right, let's wrap up this episode. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in episode 112. This is Feng Zhu signing off. Have a good weekend, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. All right, thank you so much. Bye-bye.